Good evening, brave souls, and welcome once more to our scary stories, where we delve into the chilling, the uncanny, and the downright terrifying. I'm your guide on this journey into the darkness, here to whisper tales that will send a shiver down your spine, and make you question every shadow you see. Tonight, we traverse the unsettling path to a small town gripped in a terror like no other. A town where night overstays its welcome, and horrifying creatures from local folklore become terrifyingly real. So, get comfortable as you can be, and let's unravel the mystery of Crescent Vale and our story down in Waning Crescent. Are you ready? In the heart of the American Midwest, nestled between sprawling cornfields and a murmuring river, lay the town of Crescent Vale. With the charm of a forgotten age and the comfort of predictability, Crescent Vale was a microcosm all its own. Its sunlit main street was lined with family-run shops, casting long, shimmering reflections on the fresh rain-soaked pavement. One evening, as dusk descended, an unsettling anomaly occurred. Instead of the comforting routine of the setting sun giving way to twilight, the sun seemed to be stuck in a relentless battle with the horizon. The orange and pink hues lingered longer, clinging to the sky like a watercolor painting refusing to dry. At the town's diner, the clink of cutlery against plates and hum of conversation created an orchestration of familiar sounds. Mrs. Madison, the diner's owner, stood behind the counter, her silver hair catching the lasting glow from outside. "I've never seen a sunset quite like this, have you, Sam?" she asked, glancing at her frequent customer, Sam Parker, Crescent Vale's local meteorologist. Sam looked out the frosted window, narrowing his eyes at the lingering twilight. "Not at all, Judy," he replied, stirring his coffee thoughtfully. His senses tingled, a mixture of intrigue and uncertainty that seeped into his tone. "It's fascinating, yet peculiar." Just as Judy was about to respond, the door of the diner creaked open. A gust of cool evening air swept in, stirring the warm, comforting aroma of home-cooked meals and sweet pastries. The town's librarian, Clara Davis, hurried in, her anxious expression oddly contrasting with the relaxed ambience. "The folks at the senior center are all riled up," she said, taking off her coat. "This sunset, they're saying it's a bad omen." The atmosphere in the diner shifted slightly, like the faint but undeniable drop in temperature before a storm. Their conversation about the sunset had morphed from casual curiosity to a disquieting concern. As the town drifted into the embrace of this extended twilight, each person started experiencing the uneasiness of a routine disrupted. Sam, Judy, and Clara, along with the rest of the townsfolk, had no idea that this was just the prologue of a tale that would challenge their comprehension of reality, time, and their own town's history. As the unnaturally prolonged twilight continued to cast its otherworldly glow over Crescent Vale, the curtain was being raised on a chilling drama that would introduce them to nightmares they'd only ever heard of in hushed whispers and local legends. The extended twilight gave way to an eerie night that stretched out like an ocean without a horizon. Stars that usually glimmered in the velvet blackness now blinked hesitantly, as if confused by the night's irregular length. Residents tossed and turned in their beds, the collective unease of Crescent Vale tangling with the rhythm of slumber. As the moon made its unhurried arc across the sky, time seemed to dawdle, leaving the town under a lingering spell of midnight. Inside the Moonstone pub, the town's usual night owls congregated, their laughter and banter punctuating the stillness outside. Huddled over a worn-out pool table were Sheriff Matty Sullivan and Doc Phillips, Crescent Vale's only doctor and resident philosopher. Matty, a tall figure with a gruff voice softened by age, squinted at the ancient wall clock. "This night's as stubborn as a mule," he remarked, chalking his pool cue. "Seems like it's taking a lifetime." Doc, adjusting his glasses, nodded. "It's messing with our internal body clocks. That's why it feels strange." A murmur of agreement swept the pub, an acknowledgement of the disconcerting disruption in their usual rhythm of life. Meanwhile, Clara, surrounded by the comforting scent of old books and hushed silence of the town library, dug through stacks of weathered documents. The whispers about omens had sparked her interest in the local lore, stories often told as amusement on quiet nights. As she leafed through a faded page, the barely legible handwritten tales of never-ending nights and shadowy figures gripped her with a thrill of apprehension. Simultaneously, in his home office lined with weather maps and scientific journals, Sam was embroiled in a similar investigation. He studied historical weather patterns and celestial cycles, hoping to find an explanation for the night's stubborn grip. His logical mind wrestled with the uneasy feeling in his gut, a sensation like the first ripple of an incoming tide. At the heart of Crescent Vale, the seemingly unending night pressed on. The town's collective disquiet echoed in the silence, amplifying the small sounds of the night into a symphony of unease. The clicking of Clara's pen, the turning of pages, the clink of glass at the Moonstone pub, and the low hum of Sam's computer all played out against the backdrop of the darkness of this stubborn night. The townsfolk could not shake off a feeling they were standing at the edge of a chasm, staring into the unknown. The local legends, once mere ghost stories, now cloaked their minds with shadows of unease, adding to the discomfort of the night's peculiar hold on Crescent Vale. Their quaint town was being pushed into an unfamiliar realm, where the embrace of the night was a prelude to something far more ominous. As the unending night wore on, the sleepy town of Crescent Vale was rudely shaken from its stupor. It started with a distant howl piercing the stillness, an eerie, anguished cry that reverberated through the shadow-stitched streets, curdling the blood of those who heard it. In the Moonstone pub, the sharp, plaintive howl silenced the room. Matty, mid-sip, paused, a shiver darting down his spine. He had been a lawman for decades, familiar with every sound in this town. This one was unfamiliar, ominous, and it chilled him more than any winter ever had. Meanwhile, Clara, still in the library, sat frozen at her desk, her heart pounding like a frantic drum. The legends she was just reading spoke of the crying beast, a creature said to howl when the moon was at its highest, a harbinger of misfortune. Now, the horrifying cry outside the window made the old story leap from the page, its claws clutching at her reality. As the howl faded, a flurry of frantic phone calls sparked into life. Matty, his face hardened into a mask of determination, picked up his radio, hearing panicked voices reporting sightings of an eerie creature near the town's edge. His instincts kicked in, shoving away the prickling fear. He rallied his deputies, jumped into his patrol car, its flashing lights slicing through the night's shroud. At the town's outskirts, in the soft glow of the headlights, they came upon the creature. It was like a beast from the local legends, a towering, nightmarish figure, its silhouette a grotesque parody of familiar fauna, eyes blazing with an otherworldly light. It let out another sorrow-filled howl, a sound so bleak it made the night itself seem cheerful. The deputies, their confidence waning, struggled to combat the terrifying abnormality before them. They fired warning shots, the booming echoes a stark contrast to the creature's sorrowful cries. But bullets seemed as effective as throwing pebbles at a hurricane. Sam, listening to the chaos unfold over the emergency frequency, was at a loss. His scientific mind grappled with the bizarre reports, each detail a jigsaw piece that didn't fit any known picture. Meanwhile, Clara, her eyes wide with dread, began to realize that their town was not just experiencing an extended night. They were witnessing local legends materialize from the shrouds of folklore to terrifying reality. As dawn continued to be a distant promise, the darkness seemed to grow denser, wrapping Crescent Vale in a cloak of fear. Night was no longer just a shroud for the sleeping town. It had morphed into a stage, where horrifying creatures emerged from the curtain of legends to enact a performance that would chill the town to its core. The ordeal with the crying beast had rattled Crescent Vale, a town once proud of its predictability. Now, in the shadow of the persistent night, each ticking second seemed to unravel more of the town's normality. The unfamiliarity that had seemed merely disconcerting a day ago was now horrifyingly real. In the town hall, a crisis meeting was convened. The room buzzed with fear and uncertainty, the whispered theories mirroring the chaotic tales Clara had been studying. Matty, his usually stern demeanor softened with exhaustion, recounted the night's encounter to a room hanging on to his every word. Sam, too, was there, his face lined with worry. His research had yielded no scientific explanation for their predicament, no comfort in the rational or predictable. The town had stepped off the map of known phenomena, and he was as lost as everyone else. As the stories of strange occurrences were shared, Clara noticed something. Each account bore a striking resemblance to a local legend she'd read. From the crying beast that lurked at the town's edge to shadows that danced and whispered in the darkness, the tales that were once brushed aside as folklore were mirroring their reality. Taking a deep breath, she stood, her voice cutting through the murmurs. His stories, she said, her fingers tracing the aged pages of local lore in front of her. I believe we're not just experiencing longer nights. Our legends are coming to life. The room fell silent, her words hanging in the air like an undeniable truth everyone was afraid to acknowledge. The logical explanations they had desperately clung to seemed to crumble, replaced by a terrifying possibility. Maddie, his experienced eyes meeting Clara's, nodded slowly. We need to be prepared then, don't we? If we're facing what's in those tales, we need to know what we're up against. The decision was made. Clara, with her insight into the legends, and Sam, with his analytical mind, would team up. Their task was to sift through Crescent Vale's lore, hoping to find patterns, any hint that might give them an edge against the horrific manifestations. Meanwhile, as the endless night continued to hover over Crescent Vale, an eerie chill seemed to seep into the very bones of the town. It was as if the veil between legend and reality was thinning with each passing hour, ready to unleash an onslaught of terrors the townsfolk could barely begin to comprehend. Their once cozy homes now felt like brittle shells, vulnerable to the nightmarish creatures lurking in the darkness. Fear had become their constant companion, the horror of the unknown a bitter taste on their tongues. The timeless night continued its reign over Crescent Vale, the small town caught in a relentless loop of terrifying manifestations and a yawning darkness that seemed to swallow hope. The nights weren't just growing longer, they were becoming deeper, each moment laden with an impending sense of doom. The town's church, once a beacon of hope and light, now stood as a sanctuary against the eerie night. Father William, the elderly priest with a voice as comforting as a warm hearth, maintained a ceaseless vigil. His prayers, usually filled with joy and gratitude, had morphed into pleas for protection, his voice echoing through the candle-lit nave. Meanwhile, in the town library, Clara and Sam found themselves locked in a marathon of research. The air buzzed with tension, punctuated by rustling papers, whispered theories, and the clattering of computer keys. The more they delved into the local legends, the more they began to appreciate the scope of their predicament. It wasn't merely a matter of interpreting old tales. It was a race against a relentless, horrifying reality. Every unearthed legend brought a shiver of recognition, as if they were reading a prophecy of the horrors yet to unfold in their quiet town. At the sheriff's office, Matty orchestrated a different kind of battle. While he trusted Clara and Sam's research, he knew he couldn't ignore the immediate threat the terrifying creatures posed. He and his deputies patrolled the town, their cars weaving a thread of safety through the oppressive darkness. Even in their homes, the residents of Crescent Vale weren't free from the spectral terror. Children woke from nightmares, their screams joining the symphony of the haunting night. Parents held them close, telling stories of courage and hope, even as their own hearts trembled. Back in the library, a breakthrough finally came. Clara stumbled upon an old tale about a darkened moon phase, a time when night grew longer and reality blurred, allowing legends to slip into existence. According to the tale, this phenomenon happened every 100 years, and it would end when the waning crescent moon rose at dawn. For the first time since the enduring night began, there was a glimmer of hope, a possible end to the ordeal. But as the residents waited with bated breath for the sight of a waning crescent, they couldn't help but wonder what other horrors lay hidden in the persistent shadows, waiting for their turn to crawl into reality. The small town, once a haven of simplicity and predictability, was now a ticking clock echoing through a nightmarish reality. News of the darkened moon phase spread through Crescent Vale, a glimmer of light amid the seemingly everlasting night. But this faint hope did little to temper the town's mounting fear. As the darkness stretched on, more legends unfurled from the shroud of obscurity into the stark light of terror. One such legend was the Shadow Walker. According to the tale, it was a cloaked figure that stalked the town under the cover of darkness, its presence heralded by an unnatural cold that hung in the air. The legend, once a chilling tale told around the fireplace, now became a bone-chilling reality. Residents reported feeling a drop in temperature, followed by a sense of being watched. A menacing figure, cloaked in darkness, was spotted lurking in the streets, vanishing as swiftly as it appeared. The tales of old had become the torment of the present. Matty, his heart heavy with the weight of responsibility, rallied his deputies. He couldn't deny the reality anymore. They were fighting forces beyond their understanding. Every encounter, every sighting of these legendary creatures, further reinforced the terrifying fact that they were battling shadows seeping out from the fabric of folklore. Meanwhile, Sam, grappling with this strange phenomenon, attempted to find a scientific explanation. He pondered over the possibility of hallucinations due to prolonged exposure to darkness, or perhaps a release of electromagnetic energy causing a distortion of reality. But deep down, he knew the answer was far from the realm of the known. As Clara continued to sift through the local legends, she couldn't help but feel a bone-deep dread. The unknown had always fascinated her, but now, with the unknown gnawing at their safety, fascination had twisted into terror. The Shadow Walker was just another apparition in a parade of horrors marching through their town. Its presence cast a longer shadow over Crescent Vale, each chilling encounter leaving the residents more desperate for the arrival of the waning crescent moon. As they huddled in their homes, terror hung over them like a shroud, the unsettling whispers of the Shadow Walker echoing in their minds. Their dreams were no longer filled with pleasant memories, but rather haunted by the monsters of the midnight hour. As the never-ending night wore on, the people of Crescent Vale found themselves in a battle against time and terror. The lurking shadows held more than just the crying beast and the Shadow Walker. They were a ceaseless well of horrors, each more terrifying than the last. Father William's prayers echoed continuously through the town. The church had become a refuge for many, its sacred walls offering some semblance of protection against the eerie figures that roamed the night. He found himself comforting terrified children and their parents, reassuring them that their courage would see them through this nightmarish phase. Clara and Sam worked tirelessly in the library, their minds turning into a tangled mess of legends and theories. Each page they turned, each story they unraveled, added to their growing knowledge and fear. It was clear that the stakes were rising, and the culmination was yet to come. Matty and his deputies patrolled the town, their cars piercing the darkness with their headlights. They responded to terrified calls, comforting the residents while confronting the manifestations of their town's legends. Despite their own fear, they maintained a facade of calm determination, providing some stability amid the escalating chaos. As they battled their way through the eerie night, a horrifying pattern emerged. It was as if the veil between reality and folklore was growing thinner with every passing hour, each legend a ticking time bomb waiting to explode into their reality. They couldn't deny the terror growing within them. The waning crescent moon was their only hope of seeing an end to this torment, but with each passing moment, it felt like an elusive dream. In the heart of the town, the clock tower stood like a stoic sentinel, its chimes marking the passage of hours that no longer made sense. The chilling laughter of the moon maiden, the mournful wail of the lake spectre, the whispers of the woodsman's ghost, each tale from the depths of their lore seeped into their reality, stretching their sanity to its limits. In this seemingly eternal night, Crescent Vale was losing more than just sunlight. It was losing the boundary between fact and fiction, each wave of terror eroding the once clear line. As the darkness deepened, the town's residents huddled closer, their hopes pinned on the appearance of the waning crescent, praying for a dawn that seemed a distant dream. In the depths of the endless night, a new fear took root in Crescent Vale. The Herald of Shadows, a figure from their darkest lore, started to appear. It was said to be a sign of the impending peak of the darkened moon phase when the boundary between reality and folklore would be at its thinnest. The Herald of Shadows was a towering figure draped in darkness, its eyes two haunting glows in the unrelenting night. Its presence intensified the chill in the air, the streets growing eerily quiet at its passing. The terror it represented cast an even deeper gloom over the residents. In the library, Clara felt her heart sink at the sight of the Herald of Shadows in the dusty pages. Its appearance meant they were approaching the height of this horrifying phenomenon. There was a final entity, she explained to Sam, the Beast of the Vale, set to emerge when the phase was at its apex. Maddie, too, felt the change in the town's atmosphere. The residents had grown silent, their faces a mirror of their fear. The town he'd sworn to protect seemed to be sinking further into the clutches of these monstrous apparitions. As the Herald of Shadows roamed the streets, the people of Crescent Vale retreated into their homes. Their houses, once symbols of safety, now felt like flimsy barriers against the encroaching darkness and the horrors it hid. The ever-steadfast Father William began to sense a wave of despair creeping into his congregation. The glimmers of hope he had managed to kindle were fading fast, replaced by a deep-set fear of what lay ahead. As the hours stretched on, the town felt colder, more oppressive, as if it was holding its breath, awaiting the arrival of the Beast of the Vale. It was an anticipation that curdled the blood and held the heart captive, a fear that echoed through the silent streets of Crescent Vale, a chilling prelude to the crescendo of terror yet to come. The arrival of the Beast of the Vale was heralded by an unnatural stillness that fell over Crescent Vale. It was a silence that was heavy and all-consuming, a silence that spoke volumes of the terror that was about to unfold. This creature of legend was more terrifying than all previous manifestations combined. The beast of the Vale was said to be a shapeshifter capable of taking the form of one's deepest fears. It was the embodiment of terror, a monster birthed from the darkest corners of their collective dread. As the beast emerged, the town plunged into a deeper darkness, the dim streetlights flickering before giving out entirely. The only light was the ghostly glow from the Herald of Shadows, now standing by the old clock tower, as if marking the commencement of the climax of this horrifying saga. Matty, equipped with little more than his courage and determination, rallied his team. They were Crescent Vale's last line of defense against the unimaginable terror, their resolve tested to its very limits. Every fearful glance from the residents they protected only added fuel to their determination. Father William's church was now brimming with terrified residents, their faces reflecting the flickering candlelight and the fear that gripped them. The old priest led them in prayer, his voice steady and resonant, a beacon of faith in the midst of despair. Meanwhile, in the library, Clara and Sam were frantic, poring over every document, every piece of lore they could find, searching for a way to face the beast. The reality of their situation bore down on them. They weren't just battling for their town anymore, but for their very existence. As the beast of the Vale roamed the streets, each resident felt a personal, heart-stopping fear. For some, it was a specter from their past, while for others, it was the embodiment of their deepest insecurities. It was a horrifying, intimate dance with fear, a dance that left them breathless and pushed them to the brink of despair. Yet, despite the mounting terror, a sliver of hope remained. The beast of the Vale marked the zenith of the darkened moon phase. If they could survive this, the town of Crescent Vale might yet see the light of the long-awaited dawn. And so they clung on to this hope, their hearts echoing with a silent plea for the waning crescent moon to rise and bring an end to their nightmare. In the heart of this terror-stricken town, a final act of defiance unfolded. Amid the darkness and despair, the people of Crescent Vale mustered a courage they never knew they possessed. Matty and his deputies faced the beast of the Vale, their fear replaced by a steadfast resolve. They stood their ground, refusing to back down, their bravery casting a faint light in the oppressive dark. The creature towered over them, each form it took, each nightmare it embodied, only strengthening their determination to protect their town. In the church, Father William's prayers crescendoed into a powerful plea for salvation. His voice, filled with fervor and unwavering faith, reverberated through the silent town. The terrified residents found strength in his words, their hearts beating in sync with his prayers. Simultaneously, Clara and Sam uncovered an old legend, a tale of unity and resilience that suggested the beast could be weakened by their collective will. They quickly relayed this to Matty, inspiring him and the townspeople to resist their fears, stand united, and face the beast. As the beast of the Vale continued to stir terror, an unseen force began to weaken it. The collective strength of the town, their unity in the face of fear, was turning the tide. With each passing moment, the beast seemed less threatening, its forms less terrifying. And then, just as hope was rekindling in their hearts, a faint glow appeared in the sky. A long-awaited waning crescent moon started to rise, casting a soft, silvery light that pierced through the darkness. The town's collective breath hitched, their eyes fixated on the heavenly body, a symbol of their imminent salvation. As the waning crescent rose higher, the beast of the Vale let out a final, anguished roar before dissolving into the growing light. The Herald of Shadows, too, receded, its ominous glow dimming until it was swallowed by the encroaching dawn. With the breaking of the dawn, the town of Crescent Vale heaved a sigh of relief. The darkened moon phase had ended, the boundary between reality and folklore restored, leaving behind a town forever changed. Despite their harrowing ordeal, the residents of Crescent Vale emerged stronger, their spirit unbroken. Their shared experience had fostered a bond that ran deeper than fear. It was a bond forged in courage, resilience, and unity, a bond that would remain etched in the town's history as the dawn of a new era. And so we emerge from the dark, the haunting tale of Crescent Vale still echoing in our minds. The once quiet town where a waning crescent moon marked the end of a nightmarish ordeal. As we end tonight's journey, remember, brave souls, the darkness is never just darkness, and every town holds a secret waiting to be unearthed. Join us next time as we delve into another tale from the eerie corners of our scary stories. Until then, watch the shadows and keep your courage close. This is our Scary Stories signing off for tonight.